get a, oh, you don't get, okay, we're recording. Okay, good. So I think we're having people join on both LinkedIn and Zoom. If you're just joining now, we'll get started in a few minutes, but we'd love to, if you want to share where you're dialing in from, if you're new to Presto, if you're using Presto, we love to learn more from our community. So feel free to use the chat, or if you want, you can go on video and share and talk too, for those on Zoom. I think LinkedIn, you can't do that, but you can use the chat functionality on LinkedIn. Let's see. All right, cool. Getting more folks joining in both places. As you're joining, welcome. We'll get started in a few minutes here. We're letting people kind of get connected to whichever platform they're on. Hey, Steve, you're from Raleigh. Awesome. Good to see you. All right. I didn't have my music ready. Sorry, everyone. Usually I play a little music to get the to get people in the mood, but I didn't have it ready. That's on me. Next time. Do we have a lot of folks from Bhuma dialing in today, Alonso?
We invited some of the folk, yeah. So I believe
Cool.
Jorge just joined.
Awesome. Hey, Jorge.
Hey, Ali.
Hey, hey, Santil. Good to see you on. Hey, Zach. Hey. Hey, Yihong. It was great. Good to see everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello, hello. Oh, that's still me. Let me turn that off. Okay, we'll start in about a minute or so, but I will just kind of kick off a little bit of a welcome here. So hi, everyone. I am Ali. If you don't know me, I help run all of the Presto open source community programs and events, meetups like these, our Presto cons. And so we love doing these things because we get the community together and get to meet new people and share.
Yeah, I think we lost Ali. She did mention that there could be outages. So.
Okay, and we sound okay. Please feel free on either Zoom or LinkedIn to use the chat functionality, either just to say hi and introduce yourself, ask questions throughout the sessions. I think we like to make these as interactive as possible. So ask questions and our presenters are here to answer those. Okay, so with that, we are officially at 3 minutes past the hour and I'm going to kick things off. So hello, welcome. This is our first virtual meetup of the year for Presto, and we have two really great topics to talk about today. Before I introduce our speakers, just a few little reminders. One is, please join your local Presto meetup group. We have 6 and possibly opening up a 7th. Stay tuned for that. But we are planning on doing a lot more in-person events this year. We love to get the community together in different regions. So if you are located in one of these or near one of these cities, please join the meetup group so that you'll get the alerts and notifications when we do plan more in-person stuff. Second, join a Presto working group. These are really great ways to get involved, especially if you're new to the project and don't really know where you want to get started or how to get started. Joining a working group is a really good way to do that. So today we have 4 groups that work on specific areas of Presto: architecture, optimizer, the native worker, and security. If one of those sounds interesting to you, it's open to anybody. You can learn more in our blog. If you go to prestodb.io/blog, you'll find this blog there, and it kind of shows you how to join the groups and what it all means. Okay, so with that, I am happy to introduce our 2 speakers. First, we'll have Tim. Tim is our Presto TSC chair. He's going to be talking more about our newest release, Presto 0.285, which came out a few weeks ago. and what all of the new things in that was. So thank you, Tim. And then after that, we're going to have Alonso. Alonso is part of Team Bhuma. Bhuma recently joined the Presto Foundation. They are very actively engaged with the Presto open source community and doing a lot of contributions back to the open source project, which we love to see. Today, Alonso is going to be specifically talking about their brand new JS client that the Bhuma team built. He'll kind of show you more of a demo and what it all looks like internally, and maybe, I don't know what else, Alonso, I'll leave that to you to show. Okay, so with that, I'm done rambling. I'm going to pass it over to Tim. Tim, please share your screen and I'll let you take it from here.
Sounds great. So I'm here to talk about the 285 release. So just go through some of the features. This was a large release, partly because we've adjusted our release cadence. We're now moving towards a every other month release cadence, just to allow for releases to mature, get some data from early adopters, from our edge releases, and really harden the releases prior to them going out. Just an FYI on the release schedule. We still have what's called edge releases, and these happen actually many times per week. If you want a feature that is more closer to the bleeding edge, but the bi-monthly release cadence seems to work out pretty well so far. But if you have any feedback on that, please do let me know. So we'll start off. I think like some of the highlights of this release are a few important bug fixes, and then a lot of improvements in two areas. The first is in the history-based optimizer, and then the second is in our iceberg connector, and I'll go into both of those. So I'll start off by just some important bug fixes. We have the min by and max by functions. What these allow you to do is you're able to kind of like find the largest value or minimum value based off of another column, and then you can kind of like cap it by a number. So like you can get the top 5 or top 10 or whatever, and that's n. There's actually kind of like a bug where if for some reason you are kind of like making n a column value that has many values, it wouldn't error. So like it would be very difficult to it kind of like might make the behavior seem a little random. So that's been fixed to essentially ensure that this n never changes. So that could that's something to look out for. Probably if you're using something that's not constant there, you had a bug in your query, but just in case, that might be important for you. And then likewise, there was a bug in the like statement where if you used multi-byte characters, for example, Chinese characters, or anything in Unicode that requires multiple bytes, there might have been you might have been affected by this bug. And so like that's actually a very important bug fix that went out in 285.1. So definitely be on the lookout for that one as well. That affected release 284. Moving on into new features, we'll get into some of the, kind of like the history-based optimizer improvements that went out with the latest release. I think we talked probably in the last meetup that we now have a Redis connector for history-based optimizer. I'll just take a second to, kind of like describe what history-based optimizer does. In databases, you often kind of like use what's called cost-based optimizations. And this, like this allows you to kind of like go through all the tables that are in your query, and then you have some, heuristics to kind of infer, the consequences of adding a join and adding a, aggregation, and allows you to kind of like plan for the whole cost of the query and adjust some things based on alternative paths which are lower cost. The cost-based optimization works very well when you have statistics, but there's a few problems with it as well. The first is that often you don't have good statistics. So this is particularly acute if you use Hive, because like Hive often has the problem of just kind of like a patchwork of statistics are actually available to you. And then even within kind of like modern table formats, we're finding that they're just slow to catch up, and there's just certain statistics that are missing. So that's where history-based optimizer comes in. History-based optimizer, as its name implies, just looks through kind of like previous similar-looking query runs and allows you to infer future runs based off of how previous runs worked. It works at a very fine level of granularity, where essentially if you have one kind of like plan fragment of your query that's similar, it'll match it with that and use that to basically provide an alternative or an improvement over the existing cost-based optimizer framework. So it's very good for batch, because batch has, kind of like repetitive workflows typically. And it's also very good for things like dashboards, where if you, kind of like have a lakehouse that's and use Presto to power a dashboard, then, like this will definitely improve those types of queries. It may or may not improve the queries for, more exploratory analytics use cases. Another one that it can improve is like BI tools, because BI tools often kind of like generate complex but similar queries. So there's a bunch of improvements that went out with HBO. Firstly, just the latency of interacting with the statistics store that is used for HBO was improved. So just overall query time is improved when you've enabled HBO or history-based optimizer. It's improved incrementally. It was never really slow, but it's just gotten faster. A really nice improvement is that history-based optimizer now tracks partial aggregation statistics. So one thing that happens very frequently in data warehouses and lakehouses is you have, like, let's say a SQL with an aggregation, but just due to how the data is, the data distribution, the aggregation is not productive. So, basically you're spending a lot of work trying to, kind of like provide this aggregation, but, it's wasted work because there's not kind of like a lot of things going into the group by. History-based optimizer can notice that, and then it can be used to short circuit the query so that it stops doing this, kind of like unneeded work. So that's a very nice improvement there. And then likewise, we've kind of like enabled further improvements on our ability to push partial aggregations deeper down into the plan and improve performance based on historical statistics. Likewise, for cost-based optimizer and history-based optimizer, we've improved the ability to figure out which side of the join to execute, in what's known as the, probe side, which is the side that's kind of like scanning data, and what's called the build side, which is building a hash table to join against. Which side you choose for what's called join and probe is very, very important. And so we've improved our ability to make a good decision there when your join kind of like is a little bit complicated, like consists of like expressions rather than just sort of like equalities. And then another really nice improvement is the history-based optimizer now, kind of like I'll kind of like throw out the term and then explain it, but it salts kind of like what's called your build side when there's a lot of nulls. What happens when you have a lot of nulls is the nulls kind of like basically skew your join, and so like like you end up having this very skewed build side that has to get shuffled because a lot of your data is just null, and it happens that like certain tables just have a lot of nulls, and that's how it is. The history-based optimizer can now notice that and then just improve the performance and do less shuffle of a lot of this data that's associated with a lot of those nulls, and so that just improves performance and makes it so that it's less prone to memory related failures, which is a very nice improvement. We added an array least frequent function. This conveniently allows you to collect just kind of like the top n least frequent elements all in one function. We also now have an SAP HANA connector. So if you use SAP HANA, we now have a basic integration, and you can use this to pipe into Presto and use Presto to kind of like query the data from your SAP HANA connector. which is our SAP HANA system, which is very nice. Some more improvements related to history-based optimizer. If you're using history-based optimizer to write data, what you can do is you can kind of like give a hint during the writing about how much parallelism you need to write the data based off of historical runs. And so you should see a nice boost if you're kind of like often find that you're bottlenecked at the write. So that should help a lot of more batch-oriented use cases, but still very nice. And I think like these are kind of like what I would say are the most the kind of like the top ones from our general section. We did upgrade some of our libraries and allowed kind of folks to kind of like get more details on what's going on when they use CBO and HBO in the explain plan. Moving on to Prestissimo. Prestissimo is our native execution. For those unaware, we are in the process of rewriting our workers in C++. We see using the Velox library, we see very, very nice performance improvements. Actually, orders of magnitude better performance when moving to vectorized execution in C++. And so ultimately, this will be kind of like the future of Presto. So a lot of work has been ongoing, just sort of like in a couple of areas, I would say. The first is just sort of production hardening. So this is a brand new, kind of like module for Presto. And so we're just going through the process of making it as production hardened as, kind of like Presto Classic is. And then also, some of these are just kind of like our ability to, figure out what's going wrong if something does go wrong, and then fixing some bugs related to when queries complete. We, kind of like fixing the logic there so that they complete more quickly and use less resources from the cluster. And then finally, we added support for JWT authentication. This is nice because it enables you to kind of like use secure communication in between Prestissimo or native workers, which is, obviously very important for many people because, you don't want people, malicious actors within your network snooping on data and, kind of like trying to use data maliciously. So JWT authentication helps a lot with that. We did have a couple of different improvements for our Hive connector. Number one is we now kind of like have the ability to widen the types. If your Parquet file kind of contains a more restrictive type, but the metadata in your Hive has a wider type, we'll automatically widen that so that you don't have to kind of like re-ETL the data. And then we also support Parquet Writer versions 1 and 2. So in case you have a lake that uses one or the other, you can specify that when you write the tables. Finally, a lot of improvements went into the Iceberg connector, and a lot more on the way for 286 and beyond. I'll go through kind of like some of the nice ones that went into this release and just kind of give a hint on what's kind of like that coming down the pipe. The first is we can now read and write distinct values, as described in the Iceberg spec. So if you have another system that is, writing the number of distinct values, we can now leverage that in Presto. What's nice about this is that it's mergeable. So meaning like, this can kind of like be merged, partition by partition, and so. This should represent a nice improvement on the statistics that are available to the optimizer in Presto. If you're using the Hive catalog, you can run analyze. This will populate the Hive the underlying Hive metastore with some statistics, which might be useful for you. We added basic support for delete, so now you can kind of like delete from a table where the filter kind of like matches a whole partition. We've also added, we're also adding support for, just general delete support where you don't have this restriction where the filter has to match a whole partition. That should come out with 286, our next release. But for 285, we do have kind of like a much better support for delete. Before this, I think we only supported general truncation. We now have the support for hidden partitioning. So Iceberg has this ability to, very nice ability to kind of like partition behind the scenes with these, very, partition functions. This allows you to very flexibly kind of like arrange how the data is organized in Iceberg without having to, have a live ETL that you would have to do, like, for example, with Hive. So you can now kind of like both alter and also create tables with these partition transformation functions, things like bucketing, things like time, date, things of that nature, whatever Iceberg supports. You can now use the glue metastore with Iceberg. We now have basic support for views. These are Hive. These are in the Hive metastore. These are not Iceberg spec views. Iceberg spec views are kind of like still under development, but we'll get to that when that's a little bit more firm. And we also support Parquet Writers version 1 and version 2. So if your lake uses one or the other, you can specify that if you use Presto for ETL. So that was, kind of like, I think everything, I think this is a very large release, very happy with kind of like the features that went out. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, as we Alonso, maybe you can start sharing your slides, and just a reminder, if you do have questions, just drop them in the chat as well. And also, if you have them on LinkedIn stream, drop them there. We'll make sure we get them answered. I think it's a little delayed on LinkedIn, but thank you, Tim. I think that was an awesome release. There was a ton in it. I think you pointed, we can share the release notes here. Maybe Steve, you could drop a link to the release notes if anybody wants to kind of dig through those. But really great to see. And I think as Tim mentioned, we're going to be doing releases a little bit more frequently, which is really great. So thanks everybody that contributed to it. And Alonso, I will let you take it from here.
Sure. Thank you, Ali. Let me just start by sharing my screen maybe. And there we go. All right. So hello, everyone. My name is Alonso Vega. I'm a co-founder at Bhuma. And today I wanted to show you a little bit about the Presto JS Client, an open source package that my company contributed to the Presto organization and its GitHub repo. This is just a brief overview of what Bhuma does. We basically offer a builder application to create real-time data apps for Presto and some of many other data sources. The motivation behind the creation of this package, the Presto JS Client, is to be able to connect from our own platform, from Bhuma. And when we explored the options, we realized there were no good alternatives. So to just using the REST API directly. So we made the decision to create one for ourselves and then contribute it back to the Presto Foundation. We're currently still looking for production customers for this, for our own app. So if anyone knows, it's important to note that the client does the same thing as the Presto CLI. So it's basically connecting to Presto via the REST API, and we're trying to constantly keep it updated with what the REST API can do. So that's what we're aiming for with the JS Client. Here's some of the modern features that we included in the JS package. So we're using TypeScript, which is a static, statistically typed language, so that we can basically have a type for all of the different objects that we can return from a Presto query, for example, or even the query metadata when you need to see some metadata or information about a query that you just run or failed or something like that. We're using async await. So basically we're working with promises. This means you can use the legacy style of writing then catch on JavaScript, as well as just using await to program in more linear way, more synchronous. We handle a lot of the errors with the catch. We basically just throw Presto errors that come from the Presto REST API. And for the package, we're using some modern tooling as well. So it's a next monorepo. It contains not only the Presto JS package, but it also contains some example applications where we showcase how to use the actual client. We use the simple web compiler, which is the newest kid in the street, and we have the link there and just for tests and all of these nice little features. Here's a brief overview of what querying looks like using the package. So basically just create a new Presto client. The parameters that you can pass are of course all documented, but here's like an example of how you would create a client that you by default want to connect to the specific catalog and a specific schema. Then you just type .query and just type in whatever query you want to run. You will get a results object which contains the columns information and the data for each of the rows. This is another example where you don't want to specify a default schema or catalog for the client, but by the query itself. So as a second optional parameter, you can specify the catalog and the schema too. Or you can even just not specify the catalog and schema at any point and then just include it in the query anytime you want to mention like a table. We recently released a version 1.0 of the package and included some of the latest things that we wanted to add, which is like authentication and some metadata retrieval. So here's what basic authentication looks like. You just pass a basic authentication object with the user and password. So here's like an example of how you would do this in watsonx.data from IBM. If you have a Presto running there, it's basically something like this. You have like a user, you do have to concatenate something on the user. You would have to do this anyway for any kind of connection you want to do on Presto. And then the password would be your API key. And then you can also, if your Presto is running somewhere where you have to pass like a bearer authentication token, you would pass it something like this, excluding the bearer word. We include some metadata utilities. I'll show them a bit more on the demo at the end of the presentation. But basically, you have now the ability to get the catalogs, the schemas, tables, and even columns. We kind of needed the tables and columns for our own applications, so we also included them in the package. It's useful to have them there for anyone that may need something like that. Getting the schemas is as easy like as just passing the catalog inside, and so everything's properly typed. Everything is documented using JS docs as well. This is how you would get the query information. So given you have the client, you just do .get query info, and then you pass the query ID. And then even then you get like a properly typed object of the metadata with all of the fields that Presto returns. It's not fully completed, like the explanation of the query that's gonna run. That's pretty deep and complex. So there are some things that could be improved in the future, but that's where we're going. And all right, so let me show you kind of a bit of a demo. I have a Presto Docker container running here in my computer. So I'll be using this for the demo. I didn't really add any database to this. I'll just be connecting to the benchmark ones. And here is my code. Basically, this is actually the open source package. I just made some modifications to the code a little bit on the Nest server. So this is what I'm gonna show you. This is a Nest.js backend application. So it's basically just running some endpoints for a REST API. So here I created a service. This service basically just contains a single Presto client, which is connecting to my container. And then I did some like wrapper methods to get the catalogs, get the schemas, the tables, and everything else. And then for my controller, I created like a couple of endpoints. So for example, the catalogs, which calls the request to the catalogs. This is basically just typing everything as a REST API. Anytime there's an error, like I'm just logging the error and returning it back to whoever is consuming this. And this looks something like this right now. Let me find my Swagger UI. So this is the Swagger for that REST API. If you look at the API catalogs, this is just no parameters. You execute this and receive all of the catalogs from Presto. And of course, this is just running via the the Presto JS client. You have the schemas where you just need to pass the catalog. So for example, tpch, you run, then you get a response of an array, plain array with strings for each of the schemas that you have inside that catalog. For the tables, you can do something like this. You just run this, and then you get a list of all of the tables, and this is of course typed in the code. So if you were to maybe do something with the tables, for example, let's say I catch this as a variable, and then I have just in these tables, and I'll wait for this. For tables, let's say I want to do something with each of the tables. I get all of the information from the table in this fashion, and a similar thing for the columns. So I'm gonna say that I'm gonna wait for the results, and the results is actually an array of all of the columns. So for each column, I have all of this information, like the column name, which what's the default for this column, the data type, if it's nullable or not, what table does it belong to, what schema, and what catalog. So this is all nicely typed. Then we can run things like the query. Here I have like an example query of just selecting the customers and passing the tpch and tiny for the schema. And when you run this, you get a object with the columns properly typed, and then you see like the data here with some of the rows. This is basically just returning the data raw from the REST API, the underlying Presto REST API. We didn't want to kind of interfere too much in the JS package or JS client, so we're returning it this way in case anyone wants to like reduce, map something here. And here we received the query ID. I'm actually gonna copy this query ID and show you like the query info functionality, where I can just get the information for this specific query, and I get all of the information from the query here. And of course, again, this is all going through the REST, the JS client. So let's say this is like query info. We wait for this, and then query info has like all of this information statically typed about this query. And so that's kind of an example of how to use this Presto JS client. Again, this is like the way you create a client. There's some other things that I didn't show. For example, you can specify the time zone or the source. This is all using like the proper headers from the REST API that Presto offers. And as a last thing, I just wanted to show like an application that we did using Bhuma. It's using the JS client underneath. So it looks something like this. This is connecting to some tables. For each widget, we kind of retrieve the data. This is passing all through the client, and this is kind of the way that it looks here, where we also take advantage of this client by having like some auto completions here in this kind of playground. Let's say something like this, and then we have like the schemas and everything right here on the side. And I just like run a query, and then you also get like all the information. This is using the get query info method. So we also can retrieve this data from the query itself to see how it went. And yeah, I think that's it. I don't know if anyone has any questions or anything for me.
Thanks, Alonso. Go ahead. If anybody has questions, feel free to go off mute.
Yeah, and also I forgot to to show. I was gonna do this and forgot to show like where the package is in npm. So I'll just link it in a bit, and maybe the GitHub repo as well. So
Cool.
just link those.
All right. If there's any questions, maybe also drop in your Slack handle. I recommend if you're not in the Presto community Slack channel, please join that. That's a great way to stay connected with all the community, and folks like Tim and Alonso are pretty active in there. So so really appreciate it. I think the work that Bhuma has been doing is super impressive. You know, you're relatively new to the community. I think we first met maybe like 6 or so months ago. And in those 6 months, you've contributed and built so many great things already. So I'm very excited to see what the future holds with Bhuma and Presto. And
Thank you.
on that note, we remind everybody, everyone's welcome to join the Presto community, whether it's through contributions like this or joining the Slack channel and helping to answer questions, or on GitHub or Stack Overflow. There's so many different ways, right? And so we really encourage anybody to join the community. It's open to everybody, and it's one of the things that makes Presto so great. Okay, with that, I will just close things out. First, big thank you, Tim, for sharing more on the latest release. Again, Alonso, and all the work that you and your team have done on this new JS driver. It's really great to see. I'll just bring up, we have 2 upcoming virtual events. So for folks that are very new to Presto, let me find this link and drop it in quickly. We have our first kind of official hands-on virtual lab. So I'm going to drop the link in the Zoom chat, and I'll also do it in LinkedIn in a second. But this is a great way. This is a free virtual lab. We're doing it for the community, and it's a great way to get your hands on Presto. It's like going to be about an hour and a half long, and we're going to help you get set up locally, spin up some Presto clusters, run some queries, and it's a really good way to get hands-on for beginners. So check that out. You just need to register, and you'll get access to that. We also have our next virtual meetup, which will be scheduled, I think, either today or tomorrow. It'll be in about 2.5 weeks. So keep your eyes open on that. Make sure you're in the Presto meetup group, which is where we post it. And last, this was recorded, if you saw, so we will post all recordings into our Presto YouTube channel. So if you want to check out the recording, you could do it there. Okay, with that, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Really appreciate it. Again, thank you to our presenters, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you, Ali.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Cheers.
bye.
Thank
Bye.
you,
Have a
guys.
nice one.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.